There's speculation that the European Union and the UK government may be close to securing a deal over Brexit. Marathon talks went on into the early hours of this morning. The discussions have centred on the issue of the Irish border. Brexit is expected to be the central theme of the EU summit, which begins tomorrow, just 2 weeks ahead of the UK's scheduled departure from the bloc. Paul Ging reports.
Last-ditch talks between Britain and the European Union to seal a Brexit deal went on into the early hours, but without news of a breakthrough. Talks will resume today, but the EU's chief negotiator had said that if agreement couldn't be reached on Tuesday, it would be too late for leaders to approve anything at Thursday's Brussels summit.
If the deal can't be done today or tomorrow in advance of the summit, well then the leaders will have to decide what kind of mandate they want to give Michel Barnier, and obviously the UK side will have to respond as well as to how to proceed.
There's been speculation that the main sticking point, the Irish Northern Ireland frontier, could be resolved by a possible customs border in the Irish Sea. But the DUP, whose support is vital to the UK government in getting a deal approved in Parliament, were not enthusiastic.
Well, it's not that we're trying to be negative around any of this. It's a principle that we have, a principle that has always been there, and the principle that will forever be there. We have to be integrally within the United Kingdom.
Deal or no deal for the summit, EU officials believe another delay to Britain's departure date is still likely. That's something that Prime Minister Boris Johnson intends to avoid at all costs, despite legislation saying otherwise. Paul Ging, Euronews.
Well, how's this going down in the EU and also in the United Kingdom? We're going to go live to London shortly to speak to our correspondent Tyne Enright. But right now, Shirley Murray joins me from Brussels. Morning to you. Does it sound like Boris Johnson's government has managed to make quite a major shift to meet the EU's concerns, particularly over the border issue?
Well, I think that they will probably, both sides will probably ensure that this is going to be an agreement that everybody can, I suppose, pass and support. The triumphalism, I think people are trying to eradicate. I don't think anyone wants to say that one side made major concessions. But having said that, it looks as if that may be so. Speaking to sources last night, the talks went on till 2 a.m. They've resumed now. But really what they were trying to focus on was ensuring that the island of Ireland, including Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, was essentially one customs territory. But legally speaking, Northern Ireland would remain in the UK's customs territory. And that was basically the square they're trying to circle, a circle they're trying to square, and that was going to be extremely technical. This morning, sources have said that we'll know whether a deal has materialised within the next couple of hours, but it looked like positive signs were taking place. We heard from Michel Barnier yesterday morning. It was very significant when he came into the General Affairs Council and was optimistic. I mean, he's not a man, he's incredibly circumspect, but he believed, and having spoken to, again, EU sources, that the reason for that optimism was because the UK acknowledged that there could be no customs borders on the island of Ireland, that essentially they would have to be there on the Irish Sea. And one other point I'd say as well is a lot of the fears from EU sources, Brexit sources, in the last few hours, late last night, was actually more centred then on whether or not Boris Johnson could get this over the line in the House of Commons because it was so politically sensitive. So that's where we're at now. It does look like something could emerge. At 2 o'clock today, local time here in Brussels, the EU27 will be briefed by Michel Barnier, and he'll be looking for possibly a green light to go ahead and get this signed off in the summit on Wednesday, or maybe to continue negotiations into next week. But it does look somewhat promising that something will emerge today.
Oh, well, thank you for that analysis. Let's cross over now to Westminster, where Tyne Enright is waiting for us in London. Listening to that, we heard earlier that the DUP's Arlene Foster was unenthusiastic about this new deal. If the new proposal does go ahead to have a border in the Irish Sea, does it look likely that Boris Johnson will be able to get that deal through on Saturday?
Hi, Rosie. Listen, no one, I think, could suggest that the shape of the deal that we're hearing about now would satisfy absolutely everyone. But of course, that's what compromise is all about. People in Boris Johnson's cabinet say that they are confident that they do have the numbers to get a deal like this over the line. But of course, Boris Johnson does not have even the slim majority that Theresa May has. So therefore, he needs to gain a lot more votes than he can reliably count upon. There are, of course, the soft Brexit MPs within the Conservative Party are no longer within the Conservative Party. Around 20 of them who've either resigned or been expelled over the blocking of no deal. Most of them are seen as being likely to support a deal, although he can't count, of course, on them all. And then there are also the hard Brexit MPs who stood in the way of Theresa May's withdrawal agreement. Some of them, of course, are at the cabinet table now. Some of them have said they are minded to support a deal, but not all of them. And many of them are saying they'll take their lead from the Northern Irish DUP party, who, of course, remain circumspect for the time being. There is also the potential for Boris Johnson to reach across the aisle and try and win over support from some Labour MPs in pro-Brexit constituencies. But the precise arithmetic really is hard to gauge right now until, of course, we know what is actually in this proposed deal. But, of course, whatever happens, if there is a deal to put to Parliament, and even if Parliament doesn't vote for it, there is a showdown looming, because if Boris Johnson does not have a ratified deal in place by this Saturday, then the law says, as per a vote by MPs here a few weeks ago, the law says he has to seek an extension from the European Union beyond October 31st. He continues to say that he won't do that. So might that be the moment when the opposition parties put their differences aside over who might lead an alternative unity government and actually do something about it? There's a lot to watch in the days ahead.